What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Eye on the U, the Miami Herald show about all things University of Miami related. We've gone for a little bit, but back now after the football season has ended. Your host, Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Herald, joined by my colleague, my buddy, Jordan McPherson, our University of Miami beat writer. As always, in front of all that memorabilia I'm jealous of. Yeah, I know. Is that yours or that's G-Man's, right?
It's G-Man's, yeah.
It's G-Man's, right? Yeah. But anyway, we're back after the Pop-Tarts Bowl with the Hurricanes falling by 1 point to Iowa State. A lot of things to come out of that, including Cam Ward's first half and no second half. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to dive into kind of what went wrong in that game. Not that it's a shock. Why exactly did Cam Ward only play a half? We're still waiting to see to find out why. Maybe we'll never know. But kind of a disappointing end to a season that started out so promising. We'll look at the QB situation heading into 2025. Where do the Hurricanes stand as of right now with who is going to be their main signal caller going into next season? Who's on the roster? Who can they get through the portal? Lance Guidry is gone, which, again, not a big shock considering their defense struggled so much once again in the bowl game and throughout the season. And Jordan will give you the rundown on the transfer portal, who Miami has acquired so far in the offseason, what holes have they filled already, and what still needs to be addressed. And then we're going to talk a little Canes basketball, which has been depressing in its own right this year, and the departure of legendary coach Jim Larrañaga during what's been a really bad start to this year. The Hurricanes 4-11 as of this broadcast after the loss to the Seminoles on Wednesday night. But let's start with the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I mean, the over-under in Vegas was completely below what it ended up being, just because I think it hit the over-under by halftime with all the points, just back and forth, another crazy shootout. But again, Miami's defense just couldn't stop anyone. And in the end, Cam Ward or not, bites them in the you-know-where.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, like you said, it was incredible first half if you love scoring because, yeah, it was just, I think it was 8 consecutive drives with touchdown drives. It was 31-28 at halftime, just below the original over-under. It was 59 at halftime. I think the over-under was like 60-something.
Oh, I thought it was like 56. That's why.
Well, either way, it cleared.
It pretty much got there, yeah.
But the funny part about it was during that section where I think it was 17 minutes of game time, where it was just touchdown after touchdown, the in-game over-under, which apparently is a thing you can bet on, where the over-under changes depending on how the game's going, went as high as 103. And we were all looking at each other in the press box going, yeah, that could happen. Yeah. And then the game slowed down. Obviously, Cam Ward only playing the first half played a big role in that, especially on the Miami side. Ward was great in the first half, 12 for 19, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And remember, a lot of the Hurricanes receivers didn't play in the game. Restrepo didn't. Sam Brown didn't. Isaiah Horton was already in the transfer portal. So basically every big target not named Jacoby Georgian and Elijah Arroyo didn't play in that game. So he got big contributions with JoJo Trader, the true freshman out of Chaminade. Elijah Arroyo had a big game. Jacoby George had a big game. But second half, Hurricanes go with Emory Williams. Again, as Dre alluded to, we never got an exact reason or explanation why Cam Ward only played the first half. Mario Cristobal, when he was asked post-game, it was a private conversation. It was a decision made in private, so we're going to keep it private. Cam Ward did not talk post-game, has not talked since, so we never got clarity on it. It could have been a pre-made handshake agreement going, Cam, you'll play in the first half, but we need to see what we have in Emory to know what we have going into 2025. It could have been Cam only needed to play the first half to get that record for most touchdown passes by a Division I quarterback, which he hit. It could have been something NIL related. But at the end of the day, we don't have anything concrete public on the record about why Cam Ward only played the first half. But that said, the Hurricanes were up at halftime. They were up 31-28. They ended up getting another touchdown, go up by 10, and then the defense just gave it away as it did in both of their other losses, like they did against Georgia Tech, like they did in the game where they blew a 3-touchdown lead against Syracuse. It was the same MO, and without the firepower that was Cam Ward under center at quarterback, the offense couldn't muster that comeback. So a season that started 9-0, finished 10-3, and a season that looked like, okay, going to compete for the ACC championship, going to compete for the college football playoffs, ends with, once again, not being able to get over the hump. They made strides. They did make strides in year 3 under Cristobal, but now the question is, will they be able to continue that momentum without Cam Ward, without basically all the playmakers that were around Cam Ward, and having to still have to figure out your defense that was your Achilles heel all season? Can they fix all of that and build on a 10-win season going into 2025?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, because you hit on Cam Ward, a special talent there at quarterback. You're not going to get probably the same type of talent at quarterback, but who do you go with? Do you stick with Emory Williams, or do you go with someone? Do you find someone through the portal that can be at least even close? But like you mentioned, it's not just quarterback. It's a lot of weapons to replace on offense too, and they've started to work on that a little bit through the portal in this through this offseason. But let's look at that quarterback situation, Jordan. Like, who's on the roster besides Emory Williams, and what can Miami get that even comes close to the kind of player they had this past season?
Yeah, I mean, let's just preface this up the front. They're not going to. It's going to be very, very unlikely they get another Cam Ward next season.
No,
that's just Again, we got to just lay that foundation beforehand. Emory Williams right now, if they don't get a transfer, I would think Emory Williams would enter spring practices and fall camp as the presumptive starter. Beyond him, they have Judd Anderson, who came in last year, and they have Luke Nickel, who was part of their signing class this year. Luke Nickel, I would probably put him right now as the number 2. Just he was fantastic as a high school player. I got to see him their season opener. He's out of Milton, Georgia. Got to see them their season opener against American Heritage, and he flat out dominated. He was one of the best high school quarterbacks out there this season. Was named an All-American. I believe he was named one of the top 100 players, one of the top 100 out of the high school ranks going into next season. But how much do you trust a true freshman quarterback going in, again, with so much that you're replacing? At the very least, with Emory Williams, assuming that Shannon Dawson remains the offensive coordinator and doesn't get poached for a job somewhere else, Emory Williams has been in the system for 2 years. He has the playbook. He has at least he's a front runner on that, just with the knowledge. But as we saw in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, it was very, very it was a discouraging performance. He wasn't very accurate. Again, hadn't played all year. Everything for him was practice. So maybe a full camp of a full spring, a full fall of reps with number 1 unit will help. But as of right now, it's not looking great in terms of what you have, especially when you just look at what the straight drop-off is going to be. In terms of the portal, the main guy that they tried to go for was John Mateer, who was the quarterback at Washington State. I mean, they did have success last time through the portal getting a Washington State quarterback, so why not try it again? Didn't work. He transferred, I believe, to Oklahoma. Yeah, to Oklahoma. And a few of the other guys who they've had some murmurs around have either committed elsewhere or said they're going to the draft. Really, the only other big name that might come out, and we have to wait to see how the playoffs end, is what happens with Texas. Again, they've got Manning, they've got Ewers. It seems like they want to go with Arch Manning next year. So what does Quinn Ewers do? Does he go to the draft? Does he enter the portal? And if he does enter the portal, does Miami basically just back the truck right up to him and go, however much you want there, take it? If he does enter the portal and wants to do another college football season, that's going to be their best option. Right. Otherwise, it's looking like right now it could be an Emory Williams production in 2025.
Yeah, I'm with you on Luke Nickel. He was very impressive. I remember, seeing some of that game. You covered it, but I saw some of that game, and I was like, wow, okay. This is one of the better ones that they've just recruited out of high school in recent years, or has the potential to be. But yeah, if you don't get a talent like a Quinn Ewers, you might as well just see what you have with Emory and see if maybe eventually down the road, a kid like Luke Nickel can seize this job and really take it to a level that they're used to. But let's look at some of the other additions. Before we get to the transfer portal, or maybe why don't we do the transfer portal and then we'll circle back to the Lance Guidry thing, but because it's related. But what else have they? I mean, I know CJ Daniels was a receiver that they've added through the portal. Miami busy out, especially on the defensive end, has brought in some help already this season. But let's go on the offensive side first. Who else has Miami been able to acquire that kind of patches the holes left behind by some of these guys that either left or graduated?
Yeah, so Miami's only had 3 so far on the offensive side through the transfer portal. Like I said, wide receiver CJ Daniels out of LSU. Center James Brockermeyer out of TCU, was first 2 years at Alabama, last year at TCU. And again, this is the 3rd consecutive year they're going transfer portal at center. Matt Lee 2 years ago, Zach Carpenter last year, and now Brockermeyer this year. Brockermeyer graded out a little bit higher than Carpenter. Again, it's going to be another plug and play for the third year at center. And then tight end Alex Bowman out of Tulane, pass catching tight end, essentially going to take the Elijah Arroyo spot because Arroyo declared for the draft, and their tight end group just got completely taken away between him. 9th-year tight end Cam McCormick. Unfortunately, I don't believe he's going to get a 10th season, so he's out of eligibility.
Can't make it a decade, huh?
Yeah, and then Riley will. Yeah, and just a quick aside with Cam McCormick, and again, this is going to be the making Andre feel old moment. Cam McCormick's true freshman season at Oregon, year 1 of 9, was my senior year at the University of Florida. I technically could have covered Cam McCormick as a student reporter. So congratulations, Cam McCormick, on a hell of a college football career. And again, the dude was absolutely fantastic his 2 years here. The few times we got to talk with him this year, again, his story, his perseverance, it's definitely to be commended. I'm interested to see what goes on the next steps for him. If it's not a chance as like an undrafted free agent signing or whatever in the NFL to try to latch on to a training camp somewhere, I can definitely see him being a coach at some level down the road. But anyway, back to this. So yeah, McCormick's gone, Arroyo's gone. Their other tight end, Riley Williams, who would have been essentially their number 4, is gone. So you have Alex Bowman and you have Elijah Lofton at the tight end spot. Receiver, they're still going to have to figure some things out. CJ Daniels comes in. You're going to have most likely JoJo Trayer step up. You have a couple other younger guys who can probably step up. Ray Joseph comes to mind. But there's going to be a lot of moving parts that they're going to have to figure out at receiver, especially with when Isaiah Horton announced he was transferring, because he was going to be their clear-cut number 1. So
that's the biggest departure, really, besides Ward. Losing him as you knew you would, but the unexpected one, that's a gut punch right there.
Of the unexpected ones, because when you lose him on top of Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Sam Brown, and Lofton,
right?
Hurricanes don't return a single receiver who had more than 200 receiving yards last season. So they are going to be basically
the room got gutted. The room was evacuated.
Yeah, again, it was all outside of Horton. So they knew, again, just like with Cam Ward, that this was their window. Their one bright spot is, even though Damian Martinez is declaring for the draft, their running back room is still stocked.
I was going to say the backfield is stacked for sure.
You got Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyles, your 1-2 punch. Chris Wheatley Humphrey is going to be back as a redshirt freshman. They got Gerard Pringle out of the Jacksonville area. He was a 4-star prospect in their signing class. So they still have 4 competent backs, including a great 1-2 punch again in Lyle and Fletcher. So they're going to be the run game will be good, and that's probably what they're going to have to lean on next year.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder if they morph their offense a little more run heavy next season in some way, if their personnel is more attuned to that. Because unless you load this up, especially with a different quarterback, I mean, with Emery, and let's say they go Emery instead of any other person that transfers in, you're not going to be able to run it the same way. You have to adjust a little bit. So this team, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Think about it. I mean, if you're a more run heavy team, you're probably going to be a little more clock control type of team, and that'll help on the defensive side to keep those guys not have to be on the field all the time as much as they were this season. But on the defensive side, I know they've had some pretty good additions so far through the portal.
Yeah, they did. Again, they have to replace a lot. We'll start with the secondary, which, again, was one of their weakest points this season, and they're basically starting fresh. I mean, Mish Powell out of eligibility, Daryl Porter out of eligibility. Safety Jaden Harris entered the transfer portal and landed at Georgia. Deani Hill, who was one of their starting corners, entered the portal. So all they have left is Damari Brown and Jadaius Richard. Damari Brown only played 2 games because of injury. Jadaius Richard missed the back half of the season because of injury. So you really don't have much experience from this past season coming back. They have added 3 big names. Cornerback Carnley Brantley out of Michigan State, Ethan O'Connor out of Washington State, and safety Zechariah Poyser out of Jacksonville State. Those are their 3 big additions. They're going to have to figure out some things. They're going to have to figure out some other spots to clean up. But overall, they have 3 corners or 3 defensive backs they've added. Defensive lineman David Blay out of Louisiana Tech, and he'll be part of the interior of the defensive line, which, again, you're losing a lot of the guys who came in through the transfer portal. Simeon Barrow was a one and done. Marley Cook was a one and done. CJ Clark was a one and done. Tyler Barron was a one and done. So to have David Blay as a guy who can step in and work with the likes of Ahmad Moten, Akeem Mesidor, assuming he's coming back. He has 1 year of eligibility. He could go to the draft, but based off of the way his career has gone, I would think he'll be back for 1 more year. And then you still have Ruben Bain. So if you have Bain and Mesidor as your main guys on the outside, and then you have Blay and Moten as your main guys on the inside, plus what you have coming in with your freshmen, and hopefully some of those younger guys, the Armando Blunts, the Marquise Lightfoots, the guys who were, the guys who were either coming in or were freshmen last year that didn't contribute as much or were only on special teams, hoping they take the next step. They should hopefully be able to figure things out in the defensive line. And then haven't added anything in linebacker. Wesley Basaint, Popo Aguirre, and Jalen Alderman right now appear to be their main 3. The real guy they lost was Kiko Mauinoa. So I would expect that Wesley Basaint moves over to the middle at this point, and then those other 2 guys are on the outside, and then just rotate as needed depending on who else they have.
Yeah, you don't expect the most recent class guys to come in right away necessarily, but there is a lot of talent there coming too that could at least get their feet wet this coming season, and maybe by the end of the season, it contribute in spots. I mean, we did see some of that this past year in some key spots, and they've got some good ones. I mentioned Ezekiel Marcelin, another one from Central, coming in, continuing that pipeline from the Rockets to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, and also I forgot on the safety side, they have Zaquan Patterson, who's going to most likely be one of those 2 starting
safeties.
Going to
play.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to play. Yeah. Now forget it. This past season, maybe not as much, but now he's definitely going to have his chance. So let's go back and look. Lance Guidry out. Not a shock to most people, obviously, but as of right now, we talked so much about the personnel bolstering that they've done on the defensive side. Where does the DC search stand at this point, Jordan?
Yeah, things have been quiet right now. I mean, there hasn't really been much talk yet. I mean, I'm hoping / assuming that stuff's going to start picking up soon, especially since they still have that second wave of recruiting, which recruiting is about to start picking back up again. So they're going to want to have somebody in place, I would think, sooner rather than later. But as of right now, it's been quiet. But as for the move itself, I mean, if there was going to be somebody that the Hurricanes ended up moving on from, Guidry was the easy choice. I mean, you just saw how much the defense regressed despite having a lot of pure talent on that roster. I mean, they finished 68th nationally in scoring defense. They gave up 25.3 points per game. But when you look at just in ACC play, that jumped to 30.8 points per game. And then that doesn't even include the 42 against Iowa State. So they finished their season. They gave up 42 apiece each of their final 2 games. They gave up, again, that Georgia Tech game when they knew it was going to be a one-dimensional offense because Haynes King, their quarterback, was hurt. They still gave up 270 rushing yards. They never really figured out their adjustments down the stretch when the games mattered and when they were facing opponents with competent offenses. And that just it hamstrung them. And when you had the offense that the Hurricanes had, the top-ranked offense in the nation, both in points per game and scoring, and you had a guy like Cam Ward where you knew this was your shot.
Right.
To have the defense play as poorly as it did just completely shot them in the foot for what could have been a spectacular season.
They got to get somebody in there that can bring an aggressive style that can, especially on the passing game, take some chances more. It just seemed very soft in the secondary. And you've got some of those guys that you've got in that room now in the secondary can play a little more of that. I mean, just from seeing them in high school, in a few cases, I think they're going to be able to do that personnel wise. But you got to get the right guy, the right coach in there with the right scheme to amp this up, because God, it was so. It's just like you watch a team, watching these playoffs. You watch some of these teams like Notre Dame and others that have these tremendous defenses. God, like even half of that, I would take that right now. The way that team was.
Yeah, and speaking of that, again, another name I accidentally omitted when we were talking about the defense in the secondary, specifically OJ Frederick, out of St. Thomas Aquinas, started every game. So just to reestablish that and get everything settled. Cornerback, you have OJ Frederick, you have Damari Brown, you have Jadaeus Richard, you have Carnley, and you have O'Connor, the last two added via the transfer portal. Safety, you've got Zaquan Patterson and Zechariah Poyser. So as of right now, their secondary could be set. They may want to try to be adding another guy or two, specifically a guy who played at American Heritage, who's trying to transfer, and his school isn't allowing him to transfer right now for whatever reason. So they're trying to not wink, wink, that may be an early target there, but we'll see how that plays out. But either way, their secondary appears to be set at this point on top of the guys who are coming in the recruiting class. You have guys like a Bryce Fitzgerald and a couple other four-star corners in there as well that are able to add some depth behind that group as well.
Yeah, a lot of talent on paper. It's just making it work. Like I said, the right coach and the right scheme there to bring it all together. And they're going to need it, because they're not. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what happens in a few months, but it just doesn't seem like they're going to be that team that can put up 40-something every game again.
And the schedule isn't going to be as easy as it was last year either. No, remember, they're opening against Notre Dame. They have Florida, who is a lot better than the Florida they played to begin the season. You got the ACC schedule that's not going to be easy. Yeah, they got SMU this year on the schedule. So it's going to be a very interesting 2025.
Yeah, I forgot. Is it in Dallas, or does SMU come here? I forgot.
I'm checking that right now. No, it's in Dallas. Yeah. So their Miami schedule, they've got Notre Dame, USF, UF, at FSU, home against Louisville, home against NC State, home against Stanford, home against Syracuse, at Pitt, at SMU, and at Virginia Tech. Again, the ACC schedule, the order isn't determined yet, but again, they've got they're going to FSU, to Pitt, to SMU, and to Virginia Tech.
Right. And then, Pitt depending on what time of year. It tends to be late. For some reason, they always schedule that Pitt game toward the end of the season, if not the last game. And FSU likely still will be rebuilding, but it's still at Tallahassee, the hostile environment and all that. But yeah, the Dallas trip. Virginia Tech always tough on the road. I mean, we saw what happened this year in Miami, down to the last play. So who knows? So much more the difficulty level. I mean, you just start with Notre Dame. I mean, at the very least, going to be coming off a semifinals appearance, if not more, depending on what happens in the Orange Bowl and so on. Brutal. Buckle up. They got to have things in place on the defensive side for sure, because you can't have that open door like they had this season. Just giving up yards and giving up points left and right. But that concludes our football portion of this segment. We wanted to talk a little basketball just because we haven't much on the show all season long. Again, far cry from what this team was 2 years ago, getting to the Final Four, and the departure of the legendary Jim Larinaga. Sorry to see him go after 14 years. Took this program to new heights. The Elite Eight appearance, the Final Four, all around. Just the time he had here was good. He had some ups and downs, of course, during it. Unfortunately, he leaves it on a down note. But a sign of the times and how college basketball has changed, Jordan. I mean, with all the NIL now and all the transferring, you almost have to load up a team from year to year. And when it doesn't work, you can see this happen where you go from the highest of highs to just plummet down to the basement. I know they've had issues too with Nigel Pack being hurt a lot, and he's out right now indefinitely. But this team's sitting now at 4-11, and I mean, maybe I'll make you feel young. How about that? This is as bad as I've seen Miami basketball in a long time. I mean, and I've seen some bad ones. I remember the year, I think it was in the early 90s, they went 0-18 when they were in the Big East, and I think they might have only won like 7 games that entire season.
Yeah, they were.
I don't know if we're headed for that.
Yeah. They were 7-20 that year, 0-18 in
Big
East, It was the 93-94 season, i.e. the season before I was born.
There you go. So see, return the favor. But the point being, that team was that's the worst team I can remember in Miami basketball history from watching. And I don't think they're that bad, but they're not far off. And it shows you how this can go sideways from one year to the next. And I think going back to Jim Larinaga, was kind of just tired of the way that college basketball has changed. And he's not the only one. Look at how many veteran coaches have stepped away in the last couple of years. Jimmy Boeheim, Larinaga. I mean, Leonard Hamilton's hanging on at FSU for now, but I'm not sure how much longer that's going to be. Even Tony Bennett at Virginia,
right before the season this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've had Roy Williams, Coach K, of course. So it's a changing of the guard in college basketball. But I think the Tony Bennett one was kind of eye-opening too, because he's not one of these quote-unquote old-timers. Here's a guy who hadn't been coaching that long. So I wonder how much even veterans that have been around, maybe they're not like really up there in age, but they've been around for a while. Guys like Calipari and guys like Bruce Pearl, they're having success now, but from year to year, this can happen. I mean, it's kind of crazy the way that the Canes have the bottom's just fallen out this year.
Yeah, and to touch on that, having to basically rebuild, reload year over year, that's not the way that Coach Larinaga has thrived. He's always thrived by being able to develop players year over year, have them learn his system, and then gradually over time become more valuable players, have bigger and get bigger roles as they go. And now it's him having to reteach everything, the same systems year over year, over and over. That wasn't his MO. That wasn't what got him to where he was, to becoming the winningest coach in UM history, 274, 174, getting them to a Sweet 16 and an Elite Eight, a Final Four, and doing the same thing as other stops as well. I mean, he got to a Final Four, George Mason also, by doing exactly what he did before. And yeah, the NIL, the transfer portal, all of this, it's definitely impacted him. It's definitely weighed on them. And just when you look at where the state of this team, I mean, they were 4-8 when he left. They had just lost in overtime to Mount St. Mary's right beforehand. That was, again, Mount St. Mary's, just based off their rankings, the Ken Palm.
You're not supposed to lose to Mount St. Just say it, Jordan. You're not supposed to lose at home.
You're not supposed to lose to Mount St.
Mary's. Not if you're a power conference team.
No, definitely not. Yeah, no. No, so they were 4-8, and remember last year they lost their final 10 games last year as well in the regular season. Right. So it was coming. Yeah. So it's been, and again, the eye-opening, like he said, for him was after that Final Four run, basically most of the team went up to him and went, "Yeah, sorry, I'm transferring. I'm getting offered more money." He went, "Wait, what?" Which, again, the NIL thing's a two-way street. That's sort of how they got Nigel Pack in the first place, just as an Exhibit A. Right. But you can understand his point of view where, again, like you said, the changing of the times, when he started coaching, when he was doing his 5 decades of coaching, that wasn't a thing. It was always, right, you had your guys for multiple years and you developed. Now it's just maximize what you have while you have it, and then have to figure out how to adjust on the fly. And at 73, I can understand why he said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm stepping back."
Yeah, I mean that's how teams for a long time sustain themselves. I mean, the Dukes and the Kentuckys and Kansas, year to year, you knew what you had coming back, and you'd reload. Yeah. And he probably felt, they just got to the Final Four. They lose a few pieces, but not crippled down to like the bare bones. We'll have enough to maybe run this back and maybe take another shot at it. And there went that quickly, just like that, overnight, gone. And yeah, it's. In his case, I can see how it's frustrating, but class act always in terms of the way he was, at least with the media, he was always great with us, and always a pleasure to cover that team while he was there. Bill Courtney stepping into a tough spot right now. One of his assistants that has now been there. I mean, they come out the other day, I think the first game at Boston College, and got out to a huge lead, and you felt, okay, maybe he got energized a little bit. But then slowly but surely that lead slips away, and they lose that game on the road. They lose to VTech. And then last night, as of this recording, we're doing it on a Thursday morning, they also get handled pretty well by an FSU team that's not the old FSU either. I mean, Leonard Hamilton's squad is better than it was they went through something similar, and it shows you it's an epidemic in college basketball because they went through the same thing recently too. FSU 2 years ago only won 9 games, I believe, and the bottom fell out after all those years that they were going to the Sweet 16 or even the Elite 8, and now they've tried to slowly rebuild it. Last year, I think they were hovering around the 500 mark. This year, they're not ranked, and they're not as good as they were on one of those Elite 8 teams, maybe, but they're starting to be a little more respectable. Might be one of those teams that maybe finishes in the middle of the pack in the ACC. But again, it shows you Miami is just not there right now competitively with pretty much anybody in the conference.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a rough year. We can just say it as simple as it is. It's going to be a rough year. We'll see how Bill Courtney is able to try to keep the ship afloat and then see what Dan Radakovich decides to do with that program in terms of their coaching search moving forward for next season. Do they just stick with Bill Courtney? Do they stick with a guy who has been Coach Larrañaga's right-hand man for basically the past 3 decades? Or do they bring in some fresh blood? And try to start a new cycle? It'll be interesting to watch how that unfolds and how much they invest in that, especially with, again, we know the priority is football, but I feel like whatever they do with their next head coaching hire on the basketball front will give a signal as to just how committed the Hurricanes, the athletic department, is going to be with the basketball program moving forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you wonder how much a splash name makes a difference or not, because in the end, it's going to be how much NIL money do they dedicate to this team to try and get another Nigel Pack or a couple of Nigel Packs in terms of talent level at different spots? Do they get some, do they get some big men in here? Because even, the year they went to the Final Four, the one thing I kept lamenting all the time was, God, I wish they had one more Norchad Omier.
Yeah.
They had that second big man. I don't know if they would have beaten UConn, but they would have had a much better chance of doing that. And you wonder, like, they need to get some size in there. They need to get some, because a lot of their problems aren't so much on the scoring end. It's on the defensive end. It's on the rebounding side. This team is just like score at the one end, boom, give up right away. It's not that dissimilar to the football team in a way, right now, some of their issues. So we'll see. But yeah, the intriguing question, I think you just brought it up. How much do they pour into this basketball team to get it back to where it was not so long ago, 2 years ago? They got as far. I honestly, I still, that year was like, pinch me. I never thought, Jordan, I watched that 0-18 season, and I never, and if you would have told that kid back then, one day they're going to be in the Final Four. I'm like, yeah, what, on video game? Like on my video game, I can take them to the Final Four? That's not going to happen. It was surreal to think that this program could get that far. So, and in this age, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. It could either, maybe they can. A team can go from this bad to this good pretty quickly in this era of transferring. It just depends on getting the right guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, let's see how that unfolds. We got, 2 more months of the season itself, and then see where the reset goes.
Off-season, and then reset for, late October next year and see where they're at by then.
Yeah.
So, but we'll be back. I think maybe if not next week, soon. We'll periodically be back with the show during the off season. Keep you posted on mainly what the football team is doing in terms of off season moves and things of that nature. Obviously, the defensive coordinator hire is still to happen, and still more action on the transfer portal. And then pretty soon we'll be talking spring football. So for Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks everybody for watching us. Remember, YouTube or MiamiHerald.com. You can catch us there to watch Eye on the U. And we'll be back soon. Take care, everybody.